All right, so I've just opened up my illustration file in Photoshop and we'll learn the basics of how to enhance it. The first thing we need to do is go to our layers panel. So I've got that on here on mine. If you don't have it, you just go straight up to window, click there and make sure that layers is ticked. It will appear somewhere over here once that's done. So the first thing I'll do is right click and tell it to duplicate this layer. That will mean that I have a backup in case I do something that I don't like and I want to revert to the original. So I'm just going to call that layer 1. You can call it whatever you want and go OK. So that's now my layer I'm going to work with. So I'm actually going to hide my background because I don't want to see that. So clicking that little eyeball symbol will hide it. So on the layer I'm working with, there's a couple of things that we do to enhance this. The first would be to get rid of this background and all of these marks that are on it. So a couple of tools. With your tools over here on the left-hand side, if there's a little arrow there in the bottom right corner, if you hold that down, it gives you the option to change the tool that you're working with. So the first one we'll pick is this 1, 2, 3, fourth one down. At the moment for me, it's a magic wand tool. So if I click somewhere in this white area, what it's done is automatically picked up all the other white areas within this document. So it's really quick and I can then delete that. So when you have that checkered pattern on the back there, that means there's no background. But I can see that it's missed all of these bits that I want to get rid of. So what I'd come in and do is just change my tool here to this rectangle. And I'm just going to go in. Hold Shift, use my rectangle and select these additional parts that it hadn't picked up, hold down Shift, draw a rectangle around them, and then press the Delete key on my keyboard to get rid of them. So that has left me with pretty much only the main part of my illustration there. Now, just for the sake of this tutorial, I will go back. So Command Z on a Mac or Control Z on a PC will allow me to undo everything that I have done, or coming up here to undo, edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo. The quick way to do that is to open up in your window space the history. So if I give that a tick, my history will pop up here and it will actually have all of the actions that I've just done. So I can go all the way back to the first thing I did. So that was just create my layer. So you can move backwards on there if you want to undo a few steps all at once. Now the other way we can do this, aside from our magic wand tool, is this quick selection tool. It is a lot faster, but it's not as accurate. So I'll show you both ways. So if I now click somewhere in my white zone, what it's doing is picking up the white, but like you can see there, it's actually accidentally picked up some of her dress as well. So I would have to Command Z to undo that, but that's another way that you can do it. So I'm going to go back into my magic wand tool. I'm going to select that white area. I'm going to then move to my rectangle tool. I'm going to hold down Shift while I get rid of all of these other parts that I wanted to delete as well. Just holding down Shift while I select them. And now I'm going to press the Delete key, and that will delete everything that is selected on my page. So now what I want to do is select the rest of the image. So if I right click I'm going to tell it to select inverse. And what you'll see is that it goes from having selected that white area to the opposite, which will be my illustration there. Okay, so now I've got that. I'm going to edit her. So a couple of things I can do. Image and then adjustments. This is pretty much where all the tools that we'll use are. So the first one I'll go into is the brightness and contrast. I've got preview ticked so that I can see what it would look like as I do it. So I can increase the brightness. She goes really, really bright. I don't want to do that, or I can lower it. So that will give me a bit more or a bit less detail depending on what I'm wanting. And the same with the contrast too. So you can have a look at the difference that makes there. Not hugely different, but it does get rid of some of those stroke lines from my pencil or show more of them. So that's the first thing. The next is image adjustments and then levels. So basically, to get this to the optimum spot, you would drag each of these little cursors here, or these indicators, to the base of the curve. So by moving that, it's just providing a little bit more detail. So I'd bring that into here. The others I'd leave where they are. They look pretty good, evenly spaced, but I'll show you what would happen if I did move them. So it gives you a lot to play around with there. Now the next thing, image adjustments I could do, and this one's really handy, is your hue or saturation. So let's say pretty common can be that your skin color might not turn out how you had hoped. She might look like she's got a bad fake tan, or needs a little bit of a tan, depending on how you go with that. So if we wanted to change it, or even if we wanted to do a different concept design and just change some of the colors in it, this one here, the hue, if we drag this along, have a look at what happens. So it changes the whole color of the pattern. So that's a really good, really quick and easy way to make those changes. But what you'll notice is that her skin has also changed color, which if I was only trying to change the pattern on the dress, I wouldn't want that to happen. So what would I do? I would deselect her skin. So if I deselect all of it, I can then come in with my quick selection tool and just select the bits I want. So I just want it to be the dress, not her skin. I'd hold down Shift while I drag it around different spots on the page until I've just got her dress. This hand here might be a little bit tricky. Command Z to undo that bit. I'm trying to use a little bit of precision. And it's important that you have a look at the details, like spots like that where it hasn't picked it all up. Now, because I don't have a background there, it doesn't actually matter if it goes off the page a little bit. Now for this part of her dress, because I can't select that bit of her dress without selecting the hand, I'm just going to swap tool there, go into my rectangle, hold down Shift, and that will allow me a little bit more control on the area that I select and try and come in nice and closely there without getting the hand in. Okay, so that looks much better for me. So now I'm going to go in again, image adjustments, hue and saturation, and I could change it and her skin color will stay exactly how it is if I'm happy with that. So I might say okay to that. If it was the opposite and I wanted to keep the design the same color and just change the skin color or any other element, I could right click again, tell it to select the inverse. I will then have her hair, face, and skin, and I could come in and do the same thing. So I might want to make it a little bit warmer colored or a little bit cooler. So for her, she looks a bit green. I might try and make it a little bit more orangey. Probably there's good. I could also increase or decrease the hue and saturation. So that would turn it to black and white if I took it all the way down to the bottom, or make the colors really, really pop if I took it all the way up to the top. So I might just leave it somewhere in the middle there. So I guess now I'm happy with that. I'll deselect just by clicking. Nothing else in there that I'll show you for the time being. So I would say now that I'm ready to do one of two things. That's either import this illustration into InDesign or add the labels on here. So it's up to you what your preference is. My preference is to import the illustrations into InDesign and then put the text on in there. But as I said, that's totally up to you. If I was going to add the text in here, I'd click this T down here to create a text box, draw my text box here, and then I can write in it. So I'm just going to write labeling some design features. So I might say, invisible zip. And I'll just make it a little bit larger for the point of this so that you can actually read it. I can change the color up here if I want to as well by clicking on the color there. If I just select the arrows here, I can then move that text around, put it in there where it's close to whatever feature I'm labeling. Can also add in a line if I want to actually point out where that is. And I'll do that for all of the different design features on here. The other way to do it would be if I imported my image into InDesign and then labeled it in there, which would be my preference, but that's totally up to you. So to do that, I'm just going to undo my text. I would need to save my document. So first thing is to save it as it is as a Photoshop document so I can come back in and edit. I'm going to click Save As. And I want it to be saved as a Photoshop document if I want to edit it. So that's a PSD. That's why it's got that up there. And I would just click Save. It will do that for me. If I want to do something else with it, I would do one of two things. Either export or come into Save and then change the format. So if I click on the arrows here, I could save it as a JPEG document, which is a pretty standard image or photo document. The other thing I could do is to save it as a PNG document. So I can change this to a JPEG and save it like that. Or I could also save it as a PNG or a TIFF file, both of which should work to ensure that there's no background saved in the image. So as a JPEG, the background will go white, but as a TIFF or a PNG, it should ensure that it stays clear with no background there. So that's it for Photoshop. I'll make another Castify and show you how to import this image into InDesign.